5 Lessons a Millionaire Taught Me for Women by Richard Paul Evans. Read by the author.
Hello, I'm Richard Paul Evans. Before you hear this book, there are 5 things you deserve to know. 1. I wrote the 5 lessons to make you rich, not me. I believe that most get-rich books are written to make the author rich. I didn't want my readers to think that about my book and to possibly discount its message. I solved this problem by giving away all my author royalties from the 5 lessons to help abused children. I will continue to give away my author royalties from this edition as well. 2. The story of my millionaire mentor is true. My millionaire mentor, Carrie Hines, taught me these powerful lessons when I was a 12-year-old boy. Though Mr. Hines is now retired, I am fortunate that my relationship with this wonderful man and his family continues to this day. 3. The principles in this book work in good times and bad. In fact, they work exceptionally well in both. I've spent a lifetime proving them. I've also heard from women around the world whose lives have been changed by these principles. The foreword to this book, written by my niece Heather, is a great example of how powerfully these principles can work. If you follow them, you will see financial change in your life, likely much faster than you expect. 4. The acquisition of money is a psychological process. These 5 lessons work so well because they take into account natural psychological tendencies. The fact that these principles are simple to follow does not make them less effective. The simplicity of the process is its genius. 5. Like you, I've also made financial mistakes. I think I've made every mistake I write about in this book. Every time I stepped from the path of the 5 lessons, I paid for it, literally. My mistakes have only proven to me the importance and efficacy of these lessons. May you wisely learn from my mistakes instead of your own. In the course of writing a book for women, I encountered 2 primary difficulties. First, no definition of a specific social group will apply to all of its members, ever. There are exceptions in every group. In money matters, there are women who are financial geniuses and those who struggle to balance their checkbook. In writing this book, I decided to reach women at the most basic level to help as many as possible. Second, the ability to substantiate usable research was often hampered by people or groups with political agendas. Not surprisingly, I frequently came across contradictory reports about women's financial trends. This book isn't a political treatise. The sole purpose and agenda of this book is to help women succeed financially, period. In these difficult economic times and with the challenges women face today, nothing could be more important. In the face of contradictory information, I've chosen to rely on my personal observations and research. Over the past 3 years, I've had the privilege of sharing the 5 lessons with thousands of women. I've heard their stories firsthand and read about their experiences through letters and emails. I've personally mentored groups of women for months at a time. I have an entire notebook filled with personal financial anecdotes sent in by women. The composite of these experiences has helped me paint a picture of where women are in the financial world. Not every woman, but the majority of them. One of the beneficial results of my interactions is that I've identified 5 mistakes women frequently make when it comes to money. These include unenlightened beliefs about money, undervaluing their assets, burnt toast syndrome, investment paralysis, and overtrusting. This book contains proven solutions for each of these problems. Every principle in this book has been tested by women. I've seen firsthand these principles dramatically change women's attitudes and lives. As the father of 4 daughters, I have a vested interest in helping women live better, happier, and more fulfilling lives. That's my sincere hope for you. I wish you good fortune in your new life.
Foreword by Heather McVey.
It's hard to believe that just a few years ago, my life was so different. Financially, I was in a downward spiral that showed no sign of turning around. How did I get here was a question that was constantly on my mind. Where did we go wrong? My name is Heather McVey, and I am Richard Paul Evans' niece. And, I might add, if it wasn't for me, you probably wouldn't be hearing about the 5 lessons, because my story was one of the reasons for the original book. When I saw firsthand the power of these lessons and experienced the joy and freedom these lessons brought, I urged my uncle to share these 5 secrets with everyone around the world. They say turnabout is fair play. So as he wrote the original 5 Lessons book, he came back and asked me to share my story. My immediate response was no way. It was too embarrassing. I didn't want people to know how bad our financial situation had been. I'm glad I changed my mind. We were probably not too different from you, trying to raise our family and working hard to make ends meet. My success with living the 5 lessons completely changed my life. And if sharing my story would inspire just one person to experience the joy we found, then I had to share. I'm pleased to say it has helped thousands change their lives. My husband and I began our life together, in love and struggling as college students. I always assumed that once my husband graduated from college, our financial life would turn around. Graduation came and went, but life also changed. We purchased our first new vehicle, and we bought our first home, and our first baby arrived. All of these life changes contributed to our financial troubles. Over those early years, we fell into bad financial habits. We were not living extravagantly, but we were living beyond our means. We would run up our credit card paying for groceries, diapers, and everyday life. The first time we maxed out our credit card, we took out a home equity line of credit to pay it off. This became a convenient, awful pattern. Back then, the real estate market was strong, and every time we built some equity in our home, we'd refinance to pay off our newest credit card debt. We took money from everywhere we could. We paid off a vehicle not once or even twice, but 3 times because we kept borrowing money against it. I just didn't get it. My husband was working 3 jobs, and I was working nearly full-time while raising 3 children. I couldn't understand why we were never able to get ahead or even to make ends meet. Something had to change. Then one day I decided that I had had enough of the frustration and the stress. That's when I had a life-changing conversation with my Uncle Richard. He was financially successful, and I was hoping he could give me some advice on how to turn our lives around. Uncle Richard invited my husband and me out to dinner to talk about our financial situation. I was all for it. However, my husband was very hesitant. He was embarrassed at our financial situation and didn't want anyone to know about our issues. But after considering the trouble we were in, he changed his mind. That night over sushi, we were taught the 5 lessons, and we made the commitment that would change our lives. Inspired by what we had learned, we decided to be wealthy. We began by starting a nest egg and making simple changes, like cooking more meals at home and limiting the restaurants we ate at. I began thinking about every purchase. Was this purchase a need or a want? I learned that I had been spending money to fill an emotional void. How could I have missed that about myself? The amazing thing about living the 5 lessons was that I didn't feel like I was missing out on anything in life. In fact, I was living a better life. Living the 5 lessons was bringing me and my family true happiness. To build our nest egg, we began collecting silver coins. Instead of going out to lunch every day with coworkers, I would walk to a coin shop and purchase a piece of silver. This helped my waistline as well as my nest egg. Watching our nest egg grow was satisfying, and we involved our children in the excitement. To them, our silver was like a pirate treasure, and they would stack it up and count it. Soon, they wanted to save too. This was just one of the many happy side effects I found in living the 5 lessons. Another benefit was that my marriage and my family relationships improved. We were working on goals together and communicating much, much better. My husband and I did not want to disappoint each other. If one of us fell or made a mistake, the other would provide encouragement to get us back on track. We were in this together. The 5 lessons were powerful and motivating, and living them became almost an obsession for me. Some of my former weaknesses became strengths. I took my spending habits and turned them into saving habits. I got good at saving money. Being financially responsible brought independence. And it was fun. I was no longer dependent upon the credit card company or the bank. We had our first debt-free Christmas. Within just 15 months, we were completely out of debt with a nest egg of more than $30,000. Now, almost half a decade after learning the 5 lessons, we have created a new financial pattern that we hope will help us retire not just as millionaires, but multimillionaires. Our life is full of opportunities, and we're no longer focused on debt. Instead, we can focus on our family and on living. The challenges of parenthood are enough without the worry and pain of debt. Life is good. My husband and I have traveled all over the world. We have nice things, and we've been able to help others. Now it's your turn to learn from my uncle. I urge you to follow his advice, just as we did, and just as he did from his millionaire mentor. Am I grateful that I learned the 5 lessons? What do you think?
Preface. Again, Richard Paul Evans.
Let me tell you why I wrote a book especially for women. These are difficult times. Today, most people aren't hoping for a yacht, they're praying for a lifeboat, especially women. In today's economic climate, the challenges women face financially have never been greater. That's why I've adapted the original 5 Lessons book to specifically help women. Truthfully, I never expected the 5 Lessons a Millionaire Taught Me about life and wealth to become an international bestseller. As pleased as I was with the book's success, I was equally pleased to discover that women were especially receptive to its message. However, the more I interacted with women in conferences and mentoring, the more apparent it became that I needed to adapt the 5 lessons in a way that would meet women's specific needs. The 5 lessons is about hope. Hope for women, hope for families. Women have always had a varied and complex relationship with money, and it's getting more complicated. In the past few decades, the relationship between women and money has become more entangled than at any other time in history. Love it or hate it, women and money are inseparable partners. A recent Pew study found that married women claim to control the family purse strings 2-to-1 over their husbands, and are also more than twice as likely to have the final say on major household purchases. In fact, more than 80% of all consumer expenditures are made by women. Women aren't just spending more, they're earning more. The number of women with 6-figure incomes has quadrupled in the past decade. Among women with business degrees, 60% now out-earn their husbands. This trend is likely to not only continue, but increase. Consider this fact. The average American with a college degree earns approximately twice as much as a person without one. And at the current rate, by the end of this decade, women will be receiving 50% more college degrees than men. Women's influence with money extends much further than their own homes. They now control more than half of all expenditures in corporate America. Currently, 38% of businesses are owned by women, contributing more than $3.6 trillion to the U.S. economy. Today, more than half of all new businesses in the United States are started by women, with all indications that this will continue well into the future. Perhaps the most relevant of all financial trends for women is this. More than 80% of all women and their dependents will be financially reliant on themselves at some point during their lives. Unfortunately, too many women are not prepared to deal with this reality. Outdated beliefs about money and women not only weaken women's ability to create their own financial success, but actually endanger them and those they love. The 5 lessons contained in this book, if followed, will lead to wealth and financial independence. I know. They've worked in my life, and they've worked in the lives of thousands of women I've counseled over the past 20 years. But more important than material wealth, these 5 lessons offer freedom in a world increasingly intent on creating financial slavery. The 5 Lessons a Millionaire Taught Me for Women is more than a book. It's the first step in a revolution aimed at freeing women, helping them take back their lives, their homes, and their liberty. I invite you to join our movement. The gifted millionaire who taught me these principles did so as an act of kindness and generosity. I am pleased to follow in his footsteps. I dedicate this book to all the wonderful women in my life.
Introduction. Hard Times.
When I was 12 years old, my father, a building contractor, fell through a stairwell on a construction site and shattered the bones in both of his legs. My father was our family's only source of income, so when the accident left him with no income, massive medical bills, and no disability or medical insurance, the financial result was devastating. I come from a family of 8 children, and money had always been tight. But now, as my father lay in bed, unable to work for nearly a year, we were in real trouble. We were forced to sell our home and move into a 3-bedroom duplex. I slept on the floor outside the kitchen for 2 years. It was a time of fear. Mostly, I was afraid of what would happen to my parents. I was afraid that my father would go to jail for not paying his bills. I remember a man standing at the doorstep yelling at my mother because we were late on rent. I also remember the embarrassment of telling a friend that he couldn't call me because our phone had been turned off. The Chinese have a saying, "When the student is ready, the teacher will appear." This is what happened to me. During this difficult time, a man in our area, a multimillionaire named Kerry Hines, invited the youth to a free lecture at the neighborhood church. He wanted to teach us about money. We were confident that he knew something about the subject. He owned the #1 basketball team in America, drove an expensive car, and owned real estate and businesses all over the West. He was also completely self-made. He came from Ashton, Idaho, a tiny farm town with only 2,000 residents, if, he told us, you count the dogs and chickens. He was born during the Great Depression, and like so many others during that time, his family was destitute. They rented 2 rooms in the back of someone else's house. They had no running water, and in the freezing northern Idaho climate, the only source of heat was a small stove they cooked with. He learned to work as soon as he could walk, digging up potatoes on local farms alongside the migrant workers. He had come a long way since then. He was now the wealthiest man I knew. The first thing Kerry Hines did that day was to pull a $100 bill from his wallet and hold it up in front of us. I stared in wonder. I had never seen one before. He asked, "Is money evil?" Well, even though it was an evil we all wanted, we all quickly agreed that it was. We were, after all, in a church. "The Bible," said a teenage girl piously, "says that money is the root of all evil." Our mentor smiled. "You are referring to the New Testament scripture in 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 10, he replied, "and it does not say that. It says that the love of money is the root of all evil." There's a big difference. In fact, just 1 chapter earlier in Timothy, the Apostle Paul says that if any provide not for his own, he hath denied the faith and is worse than an infidel. How can you provide for your own without money? How about the parable of the Good Samaritan? Jesus told us to be like the Good Samaritan, yet how many of you here today could afford to pay for a stranger's hospital treatment and housing for a week? The Samaritan was able to help because he had the financial means to do so. Without it, he could only have offered minor assistance. He continued, "This church we're sitting in right now, where did it come from?" We didn't know. Churches just kind of grew. This church was built through the generous contributions of others. He looked us over. For many, religion seems paradoxical on the subject of wealth. On the one hand, it seems to tell us that money is evil. On the other hand, God often blesses the righteous with wealth and material prosperity. For instance, in the Old Testament, after Job endured his many trials and proved his devotion to God, he was given back twice his wealth and possessions. So is God rewarding Job's righteousness with evil? Well, of course not. Our teacher's tone became more serious. Like most things, money can be used for good or evil. Every week I see people in our area being helped through the generosity and financial ability of others. At your age, you have no idea how much money is spent on your behalf, oftentimes by people you will never meet and never thank. The day will come when you must make a decision. Will you be one who helps others or one who looks to others for help? It's your choice. You can be part of the problem or part of the solution. If you want to be the latter, then listen carefully, because what I have to tell you today will change your life. Fear is a great motivator, and I was afraid. I listened very carefully and took notes. The lessons he taught that day lit a flame of hope within me. For the first time, I believed that there might be more to life than the seemingly endless financial desperation that had been my family's lot. I thought about his words constantly and began living the principles he shared. I immediately saw a difference in my life, and that made my belief burn still brighter. By the age of 16, I had become somewhat financially independent. I bought my own clothes and my own car and paid for my own entertainment. By 18, I had saved up enough to finance college and a church mission. By the age of 26, I had saved enough to put 25% down on a house on a beautiful tree-lined street. By the age of 31, I had paid off my home. Less than 20 years from the time my millionaire friend gave that talk, I returned to him with several $1 million I wanted his help in investing. He smiled when he saw me. I understand that you've done all right for yourself. I have you to thank, I said. You taught me what it takes to succeed financially. You have yourself to thank, he replied. Then his smile turned to a look of concern. I'm afraid you were the only one who listened to me that day. Maybe I was just the only one who thought he had to. Why is it that wealth seems so distant for most people? A while back, my 10-year-old daughter asked my wife, Carrie, if she had ever seen a millionaire. Carrie, smiling, said, as a matter of fact, I saw one this morning. Really? My daughter asked. Was he wearing a crown? No. Was he in a limousine? No, he was just walking. My daughter thought about it for a moment, then said, were people dancing around him saying, "Go millionaire, go millionaire"? Millionaires are not as removed as you might think. There are more than 3.5 million of them in the United States alone. In fact, even without a college degree, the average American will earn more than $1 million in his or her lifetime. So will you someday be a millionaire? According to financial trends, it's not likely. Recent statistics given by the Federal Reserve indicate that household debt is at a record high relative to disposable income. In 1946, household debt was 22% of personal disposable income. Today, it's more than 130%. And what about savings? It's hard to believe that at one time this country had an average savings rate above 26%. From 1948 to 1992, we averaged 7% to 11%. By the end of 2007, the U.S. savings rate became nearly non-existent at an appalling 0.4%, the lowest rate since the Great Depression. Not surprisingly, personal bankruptcies in America have more than doubled in the past decade. In fact, far more Americans declare bankruptcy each year than graduate from college. What about retirement? If we take 100 Americans and follow their financial path to age 65, fewer than 4 will have an income above $35,000, while 5 times that number will live below the poverty line. More than 50% will be wholly dependent on relatives, Social Security, and welfare. Now consider how women fare in retirement. First, they're mostly alone. Between the ages of 75 and 84, only a third of women are married with a spouse present. By the age of 85, that number drops to just 13%. Women, on the average, live longer than men and need more money saved for retirement, but they don't have it. In 2004, the median income for retired women was only $12,080, compared with men's $21,020. If Americans' individual financial prospects seem so dire, then who and where are these millions of millionaires? What is it that makes these people wealthy and others not? Is it luck? It's disturbing to me that a recent poll revealed that a large number of Americans think the best way to become wealthy is by winning the lottery. Let me put this in perspective. The National Safety Council accident tables show that in a single year, you're 30 times more likely to be killed by lightning than win the lottery. You're also more likely to die by poison, a rattlesnake bite, legal execution, or to be struck dead by a car. Wealth is far more than just luck. Only 2% of today's millionaires inherited all or any part of their homes or property. Fewer than 20% inherited even a small portion of their wealth. And those lottery winners don't often retain their prizes. One study showed that of those who came into fortunes through lotteries, more than 80% were bankrupt within 5 years. I was speaking in Cincinnati when a woman in the audience raised her hand. "I know exactly what you mean," she said. "I had the best job in the world. I was the nanny for the winner of the Florida lottery. It was amazing. We traveled, ate at the best restaurants, had amazing parties, and they'd buy a new car every month. It was great while it lasted. Today they're bankrupt and live in a mobile home to flee their creditors." This story's ending is the norm, not the exception. The fate of those receiving other windfalls, such as insurance claims, legal settlements, and inheritance, isn't much better. Then is it intelligence? Well, if wealth were simply a matter of intelligence, a disproportionate number of millionaires would have stellar IQs and academic merit badges. But this isn't the case. Most of today's millionaires did not graduate with high honors. Most of them did not even qualify for a top-rated college. In light of this, it's not surprising that Warren Buffett, the self-made multi-billionaire investor, was rejected by Harvard Business School. In fact, research shows that millionaires' average grade point average is lower than a B. On the other hand, highly academic, well-educated people often act like complete fools when it comes to personal finances. It's common knowledge among financial consultants that America's most educated citizens, doctors and lawyers, are notoriously bad at handling their money. Then what is it? If it's not luck or superior intelligence that makes a millionaire, then what is the common denominator, besides money of course, that the wealthy have and the rest of humanity does not? It's simply this: the wealthy understand the principles of accumulating wealth and live them. Some wealthy people learned the principles of accumulating riches through trial and error. Some, like myself, learned from mentors or parents, and for some it just came naturally. But whatever this knowledge's source, I do not know a single self-made millionaire who does not understand and apply the 5 principles my millionaire friend taught us that day. This is good news for everyone else, because it means that wealth is less a matter of circumstance than a matter of knowledge and choice. Your knowledge of the 5 lessons means that you can choose to live the life you desire. So ultimately, it comes back to you. Do you want to be wealthy? If so, let's get started.
Lesson 1. Decide to be wealthy.
These are the words of Betty LaHanne Harrigan. Women have been so brainwashed by the destructive female culture that taught them to associate money with sin, evil, and everything crude, that it would take an entire book to disentangle the subconscious fears and incredible fantasies that the simple noun money evokes in most women. I've seen it far too many times to deny the collective discomfort that falls over a crowd of women when I tell them to decide to be wealthy. This shouldn't surprise me. The feelings women hold about money are remarkably complex and sometimes not even understood by the women who hold them. Traditionally, men and women have had different relationships with money. While women usually labor under society's crushing expectations of physical appearance, men's feelings of self-worth are more likely tied to their bank accounts. Men are not only encouraged to pursue wealth, but pressured to do so. Women are usually taught the opposite. This lack of female emphasis on money, combined with complex and often contradictory beliefs about wealth, leads to a general paralysis on the financial front. And those who fail to act, fail. As Lois Frankel wrote, if you're like most women, you don't think rich. And if you don't think rich, you certainly don't consciously engage in behaviors that will contribute to getting rich. Even today, women are still more likely than men to be taught that their roles have less to do with money than with relationships. I, for one, applaud this teaching, for men as well as women. Life isn't about money. Life is about God, it's about love, it's about family and relationships. It's about personal evolution, learning, and growth. And anyone who tells you otherwise is probably trying to sell you something. I can't think of any more sure method of creating an unhappy and unfulfilled life than to devote it to the primary pursuit of money. However, the pursuit of financial power to secure and enhance life's true needs is not only appropriate, but wise. For those who do not accept responsibility for financial matters, life is thrown out of balance. As a dentist friend once told me, those who don't think about their teeth are those who later in life spend the most time thinking about them. It's no different with money. It's not surprising, then, that the people I know who are the most obsessed with money are not the millionaires or even the billionaires. Rather, they are oftentimes the ones who are living paycheck to paycheck. To the financially enslaved, life becomes all about money. It's not. In order to be truly happy, we must live balanced lives. To be in great fiscal health is very much like being in great physical health. It allows you to do more and be more, and it permits you to live your life free of constant pain and bondage. Let me share with you a fable. A woman was looking for a place to eat when she spotted a sign outside a restaurant. All you can eat special, $1. She decided to give the restaurant a try. Once inside, she found another sign that read, "Seat yourself." The woman found a small table in a crowded corner of the restaurant and sat down. Soon a waitress greeted her. "What can I get for you?" "I'll have the special." "The special?" "Yes," the woman replied, looking around. "What everyone else is having." The waitress handed the woman a plate. "Help yourself." There was a long line at the buffet table, and when the woman finally got to the food, she was disappointed by what she saw. Most of the bins were empty or appeared to have been well picked over. What was left didn't look very appetizing. "No wonder it's only $1, she thought. She took what looked palatable and then went back to her table, dissatisfied with her meal. When she had finished eating, she went to the checkout counter to pay. As she pulled out her wallet, she noticed another room in the restaurant. It was much nicer than where she had dined, and there were fewer people. There were chandeliers and beautiful carpets. The tables were covered with clean white cloths and set with china and silverware. There were long buffet tables laden with food, shellfish and roasts, colorful vegetables, and large platters of cakes, chocolate truffles, and desserts of all kinds. A chef stood at one end slicing great slabs of roast beef with a carving knife. As she paid for her meal, the woman asked the waitress, "How much is that buffet?" $1, the waitress replied. $1? She nodded. "Everything here is the same price." "What? How come you didn't tell me about that room?" The waitress looked at her with a perplexed expression. "You said you wanted what everyone else was having." This little fable demonstrates precisely how most people live their lives. Why wouldn't you decide to be wealthy? Money is a powerful ally. With money, I've been able to provide life's necessities for my family and loved ones, food and comfortable shelter, as well as superior education and medical care. I have a child with special medical needs. A few summers ago, our out-of-pocket medical expenses totaled more than $50,000. At that difficult time, I was grateful to be able to care for my child without worrying about the money. I think the best example of the power of money comes from an experience with my mother. A few years back, I went to visit my mother only to find her quite upset. "What's wrong?" I asked. "We can't keep up with the bills," she said. "We're going to lose our home." "You're not going to lose your home," I replied. "How can you say that? We've lost 3 homes before." This was true. "You didn't have a millionaire son back then," I said. "I'll pay off your home right now. Who holds your mortgage?" Isn't this a cool thing to be able to say to your mother? "No," my mother replied. "We're going to lose it." It took me a moment to understand my mother's response. Then I realized that her previous experiences of losing homes had been so traumatic that her fear now outweighed reason. So I dropped the subject and took my mom out to get some pie. On the way home, we stopped at a bank and opened a special checking account. It was special for 2 reasons. First, it never emptied. I put $20,000 into the account and asked my mother to call me when it was getting low, and I'd fill it up again. Second, no one could get into the account except my mother. It was important to her that no one else could threaten her security. A week later, one of my brothers asked if I had seen Mom recently. "Sure," I said. "We had pie last week." "She looks younger," he said. "I think they've changed her medications." I lost my mother several years ago. The evening of her funeral, my father came to me and handed me her checkbook. "This is yours," he said. "I think there's still money in it." As I looked inside the checkbook, I found, in her own handwriting, a list of my mother's simple pleasures. Bookstores, craft shops, her hairstylist, small things my mother loved. I couldn't have known that my mother would die so young. How grateful I was to be able to provide her with some joy in her last days. With money, my wife and I have been able to build Christmas box house emergency shelters to help abused and neglected children. Since we began, our shelters have served more than 20,000 children. Wealth has brought freedom of choice and opportunity. You can't tell me that money is evil, but I can prove to you that the lack of money is. Financial distress is evil. The American Bar Association has estimated that nearly 90% of all divorces over the past decade can be traced to quarrels and accusations over money. Debt and poverty contribute to other serious social issues as well. Studies by the Child Welfare League of America have demonstrated a direct correlation between financial problems and domestic abuse. And there's more bad news for the fiscally challenged. Numerous studies have shown a direct correlation between debt and health problems. One study published in the Journal of Law, Medicine, and Ethics found that nearly half the debtors reported that debt troubles had affected their health. A few years back, the president of the American Medical Association told me about some interesting research. If you take two people, he said, with the same physical ailment and put them in the same hospital room using the same doctor, the same medication, and the same treatment, the one with debt is twice as likely to die. Debt creates hopelessness, and without hope, we lose the will to live. One of the most perplexing responses I hear from women explaining why they haven't developed wealth is that they feel undeserving of it. I've heard this many times. "I don't feel worthy to be wealthy." What does worthiness have to do with being wealthy? Would you say, "I don't feel worthy to be healthy"? Of course not. That would be silly. Men don't generally have this problem, not because they have higher self-esteem than women, but because they have never been taught that money is something you have to be worthy of. Unfortunately, the opposite is more true. Many men feel that if they don't have a high net worth, they aren't worthy. The truth is, neither attitude is correct or empowering. The bottom line is this: money is power, and power in the hands of good people is a very good thing. In the end, each person's definition of wealth is personal. For me, when a person no longer has to think about money, then they are truly wealthy. The good news is that for the most part, the decision whether or not to become wealthy is ultimately yours. As my millionaire mentor said, you can either become part of the problem or part of the solution. My life changed the day he taught me this principle, because that was the day I decided to be wealthy. Extravagant does not equal wealthy. Before you can make the decision to be wealthy, you must have a concept of what being wealthy looks like. Understanding wealth begins by discarding the distorted, media-engendered notions you may have acquired concerning what it means to be rich. America's wealthy are too often stereotyped as having gaudy, extravagant lifestyles and irresponsible fiscal habits. The media perpetuates this caricature by focusing on the small percentage of wealthy individuals who live such lives, lifestyles of the rich and stupid. While such people do exist, they are the exception, not the rule. Two groundbreaking books have done much to shed light on the reality of America's millionaires. The Millionaire Next Door by Thomas J. Stanley, Ph.D., and William D. Danko, Ph.D., and Stanley's The Millionaire Mind reveal that today's millionaires are remarkably frugal with their money. In fact, in many cases, even their own children do not know of their wealth. Living lives of excess, exorbitance, and waste are counter to the message of this book. And, as I'll demonstrate later, such overindulgence is usually short-lived. Most people you see trying to look wealthy are part of the look rich quick crowd. An expensive car or clothing does not make one wealthy. In fact, the opposite is more likely true. The path I'm recommending teaches individuals how to achieve a real and enduring affluent lifestyle based on spiritual and life-centered values. There is tremendous power to commitment. As simple as the first lesson seems, in my experience, it's the primary reason that most women fail to achieve wealth. They simply never decide to be wealthy. They may hope or wish it to be so, but they never really choose it. The simple truth is, if you never choose to be wealthy, you will never attain wealth. And even if you do beat all odds and win the lottery, your wealth will likely be short-lived. Choice is the beginning of all journeys. And as with all first steps, it's the most important step of all. As Napoleon Hill wrote in his classic book Think and Grow Rich, riches begin with a state of mind, with definiteness of purpose, with little or no hard work. There is something very powerful about commitment. Commitment to a plan or thought carries with it a remarkable force that influences the unconscious mind and brings about the desired effect. In other words, once we decide to have something, the mind unconsciously begins to create the reality necessary to bring to pass the very thing we desire. The opposite is true as well. If we believe that we can't do something, we can't. If we think we will fail, we probably will. In recent years, there's been a lot of talk about the law of attraction. I don't disagree with this principle. I've always believed that the power of desire has great spiritual implications. As the Bible says, ask and you shall receive. About 20 years ago, I had the desire to travel to China. I didn't have sufficient funds at the time to justify such an expensive trip, but I wrote my desire down on a list of goals for the year. 4 months later, a friend called me out of the blue. She had just won an all-expenses-paid trip to China for 2. Her husband didn't really want to go, so she asked if my wife and I would like to take the trip instead. Of course, you could call that a coincidence, but the odds of something like that happening would suggest otherwise. To choose the path is to choose the destination. There is a Chinese saying, the journey of 10,000 miles begins with 1 step. It's within your power right now to take the first step to wealth. Just 1 small step. Decide to be wealthy. Declare your intention by saying it out loud, then write on a card, "Today I decide to be wealthy." Now put that card on your nightstand or next to your toothbrush. Read those words every morning when you get up and every evening when you go to bed. Keep a copy of it in your wallet next to your credit card. Do this for the next 30 days. While it might seem a little peculiar writing down your intention, do it anyway. Psychologists have proven that the simple act of writing down an intention, even if you don't fully believe it, can yield powerful psychological results. And remember, the acquisition of money is, above all, a psychological process. Now congratulate yourself. You have just taken your first step on a remarkable journey. A wise 5 Lessons disciple told me that she had written, "Today I decide to be wealthy," on more than a dozen cards and taped them all over her house. "What should I do?" she asked. "My husband keeps teasing me about the cards." "Did he ask you to take them down?" I asked. "Heavens no, he loves the idea. He just likes to tease me."
Lesson 2. Take responsibility for your money.
Rose, an intelligent, educated woman, grew up in a home where money wasn't discussed. Her father provided a good income for the family, and Rose and her siblings just assumed that money grew on trees. Shortly after she was engaged to be married, she was surprised when her fiancé wanted to talk about finances. That's when Rose showed him her magic bill drawer. Instead of paying bills, she simply took the unopened envelopes and dropped them into a drawer where she hoped they would just magically disappear. Far too many women are like Rose. While research suggests that more women than men are controlling the purse strings, too many women are still in a haze when it comes to their complete financial outlook. And if you don't control your money will control you. Taking control of your money begins with taking responsibility for it. That means knowing 4 things: how much you have, where it's coming from, where it's going, and what it's doing to make you rich. Taking responsibility for your money also means not completely turning it over to a bookkeeper or spouse. It's a matter of personal stewardship. It's like parenting. You can't leave the responsibility of your children to someone else and just hope that they'll turn out all right. Of course, it's not just women who fall prey to fiscal irresponsibility. Men are equally fallible. A high-income friend of mine, finding his bank account depleted after burning through tens of thousands of dollars, said to me, "We have nothing to show for it. All I can figure is that we spent all our money on Happy Meals." "Happy Meals?" I repeated. "Yeah, the only thing different in our lives is a giant tub of Happy Meal toys." Unfortunately, most women's closets are more organized than their finances. If you're one of the fiscally irresponsible, it's time for change. Taking control of your money begins with taking responsibility for it. You're good at taking responsibility for so many other things in your life. Money should be one of them. This is a new beginning, a new life. No matter how irresponsible you've been in the past, or still are, it's never too late to take control. Here are 4 steps to assist you in taking responsibility for your money. 1. Know how much money you have. How much are you really worth? I was standing before 1,000 women when I asked how many of them could tell me, within a few $1,000s, their current net worth. To my dismay, only 3 in the audience raised their hands. I can't overly stress the importance of a woman fully understanding her net worth. Remember the statistic I shared at the beginning of this book. More than 80% of all women will be financially dependent upon themselves sometime during their lives. With odds like that, knowing your financial situation isn't just smart, it's vital. A woman said to me, "I can't ask my husband where the money goes or he'll think I don't trust him." Unfortunately, she's not alone in her plight. A recent study showed that a large percentage of marital fights about money focus on financial control. We all know that women and men see things differently. A study showed that a man who doesn't share financial information is usually seen by women as controlling and power-hungry. The same man may just see women as untrusting. Recognizing the reality of these contrasting viewpoints can help you achieve your goal without causing hurt feelings and conflict. Point out to your spouse that knowing your financial situation is not only in the greater good of your relationship and your family, but also vital for self-preservation. Nearly every time I speak on the 5 lessons, I hear the same heartbreaking story from some woman who was financially in the dark when her spouse died or divorced her. Only then did she learn of their dire financial situation. One young widow told me that her now-deceased husband had run up debts of more than $200,000 that she didn't know about. Now she needed to somehow repay that money while taking care of her children, all on her own. Perhaps a conversation along these lines may be beneficial. Jill: "Thank you for doing so much to make sure our family is financially taken care of. I don't know what we'd do without you. But I do worry about what we would do if something happened to you." Jack, feeling both praised and important: "Oh, nothing's going to happen to me, honey." Jill: "I sure hope not. Of course, no one knows what will happen in the future. But I do know that you would never want to leave our family's survival to chance." A woman I met on a flight told me that she believes men are meant to be the head of the household, and that means she should trust financial affairs to her husband. Even if this is your belief, being informed does not mean you are not trusting, nor that you are taking control. It means that you are doing your share to protect your family and yourself. I can't imagine that any caring man in this world would deny this necessity to his partner. You would be very concerned if you had a business partner who refused to show you the company books. This is no different in a marital partnership. As unromantic as it sounds, you are business partners. Unfortunately, a spouse who is excessively reticent in sharing financial information may be hiding something: debt, gambling, addictions, or other vices. If this is the case, the sooner you know the truth, the sooner you can help him and protect yourself. Remember, even if he creates the debt, you are still responsible for it. On the brighter side, couples who work together on accumulating wealth usually enhance other areas of their marriage as they develop greater trust in each other. The net worth form that you'll find on our website, the5lessons.com, will help you calculate your current net worth and will give you a starting point for your wealth accumulation. Think of it as stepping on a scale at the beginning of a weight loss plan. At the end of each month, complete the report again to chart your progress. Then, at the end of each year, fill out an annual report. This will give you the most accurate view of your accumulating wealth. As your wealth grows, you'll find yourself looking forward to completing the forms. 2. Know where your money comes from. Every paycheck, bonus, interest payment, alimony check, child support payment, royalty, dividend, gift, and tip you receive should be recorded on a ledger as income. This will also help you understand your real income. I met a woman who wanted to be a stay-at-home mother, but made the difficult decision to go to work to supplement an inadequate household income, only to find that they were worse off than before. She failed to take into account the added taxes, a higher tax bracket, child care, and other incidental expenditures such as transportation to her job, a new wardrobe, and eating out. Knowing where your money comes from means an accurate portrayal of real income and the cost of that income. Knowing where your money comes from will also help you decide how your money should be used. Ongoing income, such as your monthly salary and alimony or child support payments, should cover ongoing expenditures. One-time money, such as a bonus or inheritance, should be used to pay for one-time expenditures, such as a vacation or an education fund, or for paying off debt. 3. Know where your money is going. While it's useful and important to know where your money comes from, understanding exactly where you are spending your money is the only way to gain control of it. You can't plug the holes in your boat if you don't know where they are. You might have noticed, even been surprised, that I rarely use the word budget in this book. There's a reason for this. Whenever you focus on deprivation, you trigger the powerful want instinct. This is not to say that you should never deprive yourself of something. The same is true for budgeting. When you try to force yourself to do something you don't want to do, you battle your greatest opponent, yourself. The best way to handle your excessive spending is to either lose the desire to spend or to find something you want more, like wealth, freedom, and security. The first step in controlling your spending is to identify your spending. I recommend the use of a checkbook and a simple computer program such as Quicken, but technology is not necessary. For the first 20 years of my financial life, I kept track of my money in an inexpensive ledger I purchased at an office supply store. On our website at the5lessons.com, you'll find a cash flow form. This form will help you categorize all your incomes and expenses. You'll notice that the first line under expenditures is for documenting how much you are paying yourself. In the next chapter, Lesson 3, you'll learn to always keep a portion of everything you earn. The second expenditure on the form is for charitable donations. Lesson 5 addresses this important item. The rest of your expense categories will depend on your chosen lifestyle. Each expenditure on your cash flow form represents an opportunity for reduction. As you track your money, you'll discover that most things cost more than you think. For instance, say you want to buy a larger home. If you're like most people, you'll just look at how much extra your mortgage payment is per month. But the increased mortgage is just the beginning. There are moving costs, realtor commissions, and loan fees. There are extra property taxes, insurance, utilities, ongoing upkeep, and 1,000 little extras from light bulbs to furnace filters. If you have hired help, a larger home will cost more. If the home has a bigger yard, there are also extra costs in landscaping, extra water, sprinkler repair, extra gas for the lawnmower. You get the idea. When you add up the real costs, what seemed like an acceptable increase suddenly doesn't look so attractive. Learning where your money is going is the most important step toward gaining control of your finances. It is also an important way to gain control of your life. In the same way that knowing your net worth gives you control, so does tracking your money. 4. Know what your money is doing. The world's wealthiest individuals and families make money by managing their money. The point of amassing wealth is to make money work for you instead of against you. Eventually, as you stay true to yourself and the 5 lessons, your money will earn more each year than your salary. Money will become your servant instead of the other way around. If you had an employee who sat around and did nothing, you would quickly fire her. Ongoing monthly evaluation of your investments is vital to your financial success. As you fill out your monthly net worth form, you will see clearly just how hard your money is working for you. Knowing exactly where you should put your money to make it work for you is a more complex matter and is addressed more fully in the next lesson. One objection I often hear is, "I don't have time for this." Saying that you don't have time to watch your money is like saying that you don't have time to watch the traffic signals as you drive. You don't have time not to. You spend thousands of hours each year earning. Why wouldn't you take a few hours a month to track where it goes?
Lesson 3. Keep a portion of everything you earn.
We've all read stories about celebrities declaring bankruptcy or whining about their financial woes. From rock stars pawning their Grammys in order to pay delinquent tax bills, to former professional boxers waiting on tables, the list of financial casualties grows annually. When I hear these stories, the questions I ask myself are, why didn't they just put some of what they had someplace safe? Why didn't they save the proceeds from just one album, or in the case of the boxer, just one title fight? If they had, they'd still be wealthy. Of course, celebrities aren't the only ones making bad financial choices. A financial advisor told me the tragic story of a client who had been seriously injured at work, losing a limb in an on-the-job accident. In compensation, he had received a $3 million insurance settlement, enough, if properly handled, to enable him to support his family indefinitely at a salary 500% higher than what they were earning before the accident. Almost immediately after my friend created a financial plan for this couple, they began to change. Seduced by their sudden riches, they began taking a little here and there, buying things, recklessly loaning money to family and friends, launching unwise business ventures. The list of expenses grew as their account diminished. At a subsequent meeting with this couple, my friend noticed that the woman was wearing the largest diamond he had ever seen. "She deserves it," her husband said, "after all she's been through with my accident." In spite of my friend's ongoing counsel and encouragement, week after week the couple withdrew funds until less than 3 years later they were completely broke and were both out looking for work. The reason they and others in similar situations fell is because they do not understand the principles of wealth, especially the third lesson: a portion of all you earn is yours to keep. "But all I earn is mine to keep," I often hear. Well, if that's true, then why do you have so little of it left? The truth is that you give your money to everyone but yourself. You've heard it said before, and it's true. It's not what you earn, it's what you keep that makes you rich. The wealthy woman pays herself first. Pay yourself first is a popular modern financial catchphrase, but it has actually been around for decades. Back in the 1920s, George S. Clason wrote, "I found the road to wealth when I decided that a part of all I earned was mine to keep." How much should you pay yourself? That depends a good deal, as the Cheshire Cat said to Alice, on where you want to get to, and how fast you want to get there. Obviously, the more you put away, the faster you'll achieve your goals. Research shows that most American millionaires save between 15 and 20% of their incomes. I recommend that you push yourself as hard as possible at first, just to test your limits. Then, when you ease back, you'll find your comfort zone. However, the amount you save should be a minimum of 10% of your ongoing salary and 75 to 100% of your side earnings. Here's some good news for women. Most research shows that women value savings more than men. One study by Alliance showed that women preferred financial security 15 times more than financial status. That doesn't mean they always save, and many don't, but it does give women a psychological advantage. One reader told me how her mother would stash away money in her stocking drawer. It got us through some tough times, she recalled. Another woman told me that for years she had worked for a charity earning only a small wage. Unbeknownst to her husband, she had put away all of her earnings into a savings account. When her husband lost his job, they used her savings to live on until he found another job. Her advice to women: every woman should have her own secret savings account. The power of compound interest. Albert Einstein is believed to have called compound interest the greatest mathematical discovery of all time. Too many women either do not realize the power of compounding interest or simply do not take advantage of it. In 2007, the median American household income was $50,233 a year. If Ms. Average allocates 10 or 15 or 20% of her income to her nest egg and earns an average interest rate of 10.2%, she will accumulate wealth at the following rates. At the end of the first year at 10%, she'll have $5,309. But if she saves 20%, she'll have $10,046. By her 10th year at 10%, she'll have $87,470. But if she's saving 20%, she'll have $174,941. And here's where it gets really fun. After saving 10% for 40 years, she'll have more than $2.8 million. But if she has saved 20%, she'll have nearly $5.7 million. And it gets even better. Lesson 4 describes a method that allows you to more than double your monthly contributions. Initially, putting 10% of your income into your nest egg may require some faith, but it's worth the leap. Over and over, I've heard those who try say, "We've never missed what we put away. Where did the extra money come from?" This is my theory. I estimate that most people are wasting between 10 to 20% of their income. That is, that much of their income disappears without a trace. This being the case, I tell them the good news about their dilemma. They can easily save and invest that much of their income and not notice any negative change in their current lifestyle. In fact, as my niece Heather noted, most of those I've helped have actually experienced an improvement in their standard of living. As they adhere to the 5 lessons and put money away, they find themselves managing the remaining percentage of their income much better than before. It's important now that you start your nest egg. Remember, becoming wealthy is as much a psychological and emotional exercise as a physical one. Anyone who has ever dieted knows that it's easier to stick to a diet when you see immediate progress in the mirror and on the scale. Likewise, the most powerful way to encourage new wealth-accumulating behavior is to see visible, tangible results. I found that the best way to do that is to create tangible wealth, to have something you can watch grow. In fiscal terms, this is called a nest egg, a sum of money put aside for future expenses. Personally, I prefer the dictionary's older, original definition of a nest egg, a real or artificial egg that is put in a hen's nest to encourage it to continue laying after the other eggs have been removed. This definition alludes to a powerful psychological need for anyone attempting to accumulate wealth, the provision of incentives in order to spur further productivity. I cannot overstate the importance of creating an abiding mental concept of your nest egg. When I was 14 years old, I decided to start building my wealth by collecting precious metals. I couldn't afford gold coins, but silver was selling for around $3 an ounce. About 2 hours of work at my part-time job. I took one of my mom's canning jars and began filling it with 1-ounce silver rounds. This method of wealth accumulation had several advantages. First, the fact that the rounds were not actual currency lessened my temptation and my ability to spend them. Second, I could actually see myself growing richer. As a poor boy, I found it satisfying to watch my wealth increase. And as nothing fuels success like success, the desire to watch the pile of silver grow helped motivate me to save more. The coins multiplied quickly, and soon I had filled several jars. Then I filled an entire wooden chest with silver. I felt like a pirate with a treasure chest. By the age of 18, I had saved thousands of dollars. As my niece Heather collected precious metals, she discovered 2 additional advantages. First, perspective. She began to weigh the cost of an item against the price of silver. For example, she'd reason, I could take my family out for dinner, or I could make dinner and buy 4 more pieces of silver. Second, purchasing the silver round satisfied Heather's urge to spend. Like so many others, she had discovered that she was a shopaholic, so spending her money on silver was like eating her cake and having it too. Really? Precious metals? Does it need to be precious metals? Well, of course not. Collecting silver coins worked for me because to me they felt like wealth, and that helped me to succeed. A few years back, I was dropping my son off at preschool when his teacher stopped me. "Mr. Evans," she said, "I don't mean to delay you, but I just wanted to thank you. I read your money book a few months back, and now I'm out of debt for the first time in my life." "Congratulations," I said. "Tell me about your nest egg." She looked at me quizzically. "How did you know I had started a nest egg?" "Because the 5 lessons don't work if you don't start one," I replied. She hesitated. "I didn't collect gold or silver," she said, a little embarrassed. "I didn't know how to. So I just filled jars with dollar coins. I've got these jars all around my house." Now, of course, putting money in jars isn't considered a good financial investment, but psychologically, it was a great one. I ran into the same woman a year later. "How's it going?" I asked. She stuck 2 thumbs up. Never been richer. A common question I get is, how do I purchase precious metals? Well, as with all investments, there are pros and cons to purchasing precious metals. Starting your nest egg with precious metals is good for emotional and security reasons, but in the long run, it's not likely to pay out the interest you need for steady financial growth. In the past 50 years, the average annual return on precious metals has been around 4.5%, less than half the rate of return of the S&P 500. However, as we've witnessed lately, in times of economic crisis, precious metals act as a buffer against loss. For this reason, I recommend starting your nest egg with some metals. Then, after you've established your nest egg, enlist the help of a professional financial advisor and expand to other forms of investments. If you're on a limited income, I recommend purchasing silver. I began with .999 pure 1-ounce silver rounds as opposed to coins or bullion. You'll pay a bit more for rounds, but they offer a better guarantee of authenticity, and you'll recover the extra money paid when you sell. Be careful not to buy special collector's coins unless that's your intention and you're sufficiently knowledgeable, as they likewise carry a special premium, which may not be recoverable when it comes time to sell. The same is true if you're purchasing gold. For gold, .999 pure 1-ounce coins, as well as other weights, are minted in the form of Canadian maple leafs, American eagles, Chinese pandas, and South African krugerrands. Even though they all contain 1 ounce of gold, there is usually a slight difference in the cost. These gold coins are quite beautiful, and the smaller coins make lovely pendants. Both silver and gold are available at coin shops and precious metal dealers. Be sure to shop around before you purchase, as dealers update their prices at different times of the day. You can track hourly precious metal prices at the 5 Lessons website at the5lessons.com. Remember to seek professional assistance. Ultimately, how and where you keep your nest egg is a decision you should base on your own current financial needs and the availability of trustworthy financial counsel. As your investment builds, take the time to learn more about investing and investment opportunities. Diversity is important. As your nest egg grows, you may want to have a combination of securities, precious metals, and real estate. A 401k with an employer's match can be a very powerful tool in building wealth. Above all, avoid risky schemes and investments, no matter the supposed payoff. Just as you would consult a doctor before making any serious decisions regarding your health, consult an established, successful investment counselor before you make any major investment decision. As your nest egg grows, you'll begin to feel the power that comes from having wealth, and you'll notice things that are within your financial grasp that were not available to you before. With this newfound power, you'll be tempted to dip into the nest and steal a few eggs. Resist. You are likely familiar with the fable, The Goose That Laid the Golden Eggs. In this story, a poor countryman discovers that one of his geese lays golden eggs, but only one a day. At first, he's happy with his new riches, but as his wealth grows, he becomes greedy and impatient. Finally, he decides to cut the goose open to get all the gold out at once. Of course, in so doing, he manages only to kill the goose and gets no more eggs. A more modern frame of reference is that many women's money habits resemble an eating disorder. They save their money only to suddenly purge it in a binge of reckless spending. Bulimic behavior will doom your nest egg. George S. Clayson wrote appropriately about this habit. Full, you eat your children. Remember, the primary purpose of developing your nest egg is not to spend it, but to make it earn more money for you, just as the wealthy do. With patience, your nest egg will earn more income than you can working full-time, but only if you leave it alone long enough to allow it to grow. What about debt? Well, here are the 5 steps to freedom from debt. First, record all your debt on one sheet if possible, so you know exactly what you're facing. Better the devil you know than the devil you don't. Write down the company or person you owe, how old the debt is, the invoice number, and the amount. Make sure you don't miss a single debt, as having unaccounted debt pop up later is demoralizing. Second, contact, preferably call, everyone you owe money and ask if they will reduce your debt. You'll be amazed at how much you can reduce using the 7 golden words. You'll learn this powerful technique in the next chapter. A company I know of did this and knocked out more than 1/3 of their debt in just 1 week. They found that many of their creditors were willing to accept as little as 30% of the invoice if they would pay off the debt quickly. This required them to shuffle their payment priorities a bit. You will probably be surprised at how many of your creditors will be willing to work with you. Most companies are so used to people trying to run out on them that someone trying to honorably pay her debts is a real treat. Third, consolidate your remaining debt with the lowest interest rate possible. If you're struggling with significant debt, you might want to consult with a CCCS, a Consumer Credit Counseling Service, to create a debt repayment plan. Today, many people carry the bulk of their consumer debt on their high-interest credit cards. If this is you, take the time to transfer your debt to a loan with a more reasonable interest rate. Fourth, pay down your debt. A question I often get is, should I pay off my debt before I start building my nest egg? The answer is, it depends. In most cases, I recommend using 10% of your funds for debt repayment and 10% for your wealth accumulation, even if you're losing a few percentage points in interest. I call this the 10-10 payoff. The reason for this is strictly psychological. It's important emotionally for you to see the growth of your wealth. If you're not seeing your wealth increase, you'll be less motivated and ultimately less likely to succeed. I can best explain this principle by sharing a true story. I once had a friend who weighed more than 350 pounds. After years of struggling with his weight, he decided to do something about it once and for all. He put himself on a remarkably intense and painful diet. For 90 days, all he could eat was this foul-smelling protein goop 4 times a day. He was miserable, but he stuck to it. After the first 30 days, he had lost close to 50 pounds. Although this was a tremendous success, to him it didn't feel like one. He still weighed more than 300 pounds. No one, outside those of us close to him, was congratulating him or telling him how good he looked. With all the pain he had endured, and with no positive reinforcement to inspire him, he eventually quit. I'll never forget the day he said to me, "Come on, Rick, let's go get some pizza." Whether you've fallen 100 feet or 50 feet deep in a well, it's still dark and cold. If you're $100,000 in debt and manage through great sacrifice and hard work to pay off $50,000, life doesn't really seem all that different as you're still deep in debt. However, if you were to pay off $25,000 and had $25,000 in an investment account earning interest, you would feel different. Success fuels success. Lack of success fuels nothing. There are 2 other reasons for my philosophy. First, I've noticed that people develop what I'll call a debt metabolism. This is how one woman explained her debt metabolism. It seems we've always had $50,000 of debt. No more, no less. Then, when my mother died, we were left an inheritance of a little more than $50,000. The first thing we did was to pay off all our debt. But within 6 months, we were right back to $50,000 in debt. If we had put the money aside or gradually paid off the debt, I think we could have changed our habits. The second reason for simultaneously saving and paying off your debt is that it will help train you for your new lifestyle. Once your debt is paid off, just apply the extra 10% to your nest egg to accelerate your wealth accumulation. When should you pay off your debt before starting a nest egg? When your interest rate is hopelessly high and you can't get it reduced. But even in this case, I would still start a nest egg with 1% of my income just to create the habit and belief. And fifth, don't create any more debt. This might be the time to cut up some credit cards. In today's world, it's not necessarily realistic to not have a credit card, but you can cut down on the number of cards you have, lower their limits, or, if you're unable to control yourself, change to a debit card. One of the worst things that could happen after you've consolidated your debt is for you to create a new form of debt. If you suspect that you're a compulsive or binge spender, get help now.
Lesson 4. Win in the margins.
Of all the lessons, Lesson 4 has the most to do with the speed of my own financial success. What does it mean to win in the margins? Simply this. The wealthy find additional ways to add to their growing nest egg. J. Paul Getty, once named the richest man in the world by Fortune magazine, called this the millionaire mentality. The millionaire mentality watches costs and tries to reduce them, and strives to increase production and sales and thus profits. Getty didn't write his 1965 book, How to Be Rich, for us little people. He wrote his book for other business magnates. Lucky for us, we can still get a glimpse inside a billionaire's mind and learn some of his tricks. There are essentially two ways to win in the margins. The first is by earning extra income. The second is by keeping more of what you earn. I recommend that you do both. First, let's explore winning in the margins with extra income. I once had a friend who had the peculiar habit of looking for money. He would actually walk or ride his bike while looking down. As odd as his behavior was, the most surprising result of his habit was that nearly every day he would find something. We would be walking along when suddenly he'd stop, bend over, and lift a coin or bill from the ground. Now, I'm not recommending that you walk looking down. That's a little weird. My point in sharing this story is to demonstrate that you find what you are looking for. When you start looking for ways to increase your income, you'll discover that there are opportunities all around you that you have never thought of or noticed. The following examples illustrate this principle. Coffee cans of gold. My wife's grandfather, Pietro de Serra, emigrated from Italy to America when he was only 17. He came west looking for work and found employment in the gold and silver mines west of the Salt Lake Valley. He worked the night shift at the furnaces where the processed ore was smelted in order to separate the gold from the other metals before being poured into bullion. Pietro noticed that the molten gold would occasionally pop, splashing the metal on the hood of the furnace. He told his foreman that he would stay after his shift and clean the hood on his own time if he could keep the small metal flakes he found. The foreman agreed. At the end of each shift, Pietro would climb into the furnace and scrape the thin gold flakes from the metal hood into an empty coffee can. Within months, the poor immigrant boy had filled 2 coffee cans to the brim with the precious metal, nearly 20 pounds of gold. That's nearly $250,000 in today's money. Stampin' success. Shelley Gardner loved being a stay-at-home mom, but yearned for a social and creative outlet. And adding a little income to the family budget wouldn't hurt either. So Shelley and her husband took the money they were saving for a new home and started a rubber stamp company called Stampin' Up. Shelley and her sister sold the stamps at home workshops and signed up family and friends to be demonstrators of their product, which includes rubber stamps and a wide variety of accessories. They stored inventory in Shelley's living room and filled orders while their children napped. That didn't last long. Within months, the living room was far too small to handle the demand, and Stampin' Up moved to larger facilities, twice in the first year. 2 decades later, Shelley runs the international multi-million-dollar company, which has an 80,000 square foot manufacturing facility and a 300,000 square foot administration and distribution building. Today, Stampin' Up operates in 7 countries with more than 40,000 demonstrators and is helping other women to win in the margins. With such explosive growth, Shelley works hard to ensure that her original focus isn't lost. She believes that creativity, whether expressed in cards, scrapbooking, gifts, or home decor, can inspire others, strengthen relationships, and make people happier. It certainly has for her. Prom Queen. Kathy Clifford was only 11 years old when she began designing dresses with her grandmother. Her passion for design carried on to college, where she majored in clothing and textiles. She met her husband there, married, and eventually had 5 children. Kathy enjoyed life as a stay-at-home mother as she continued to design and make dresses for her 3 daughters. As her girls grew older, their friends also started asking Kathy to make their prom and pageant dresses. She often found herself sewing through the night to meet the demands of her unsolicited clients. Then came the unexpected. Kathy's husband became seriously ill and was unable to work. The challenge of providing for 5 children suddenly fell on her. Though she had made money designing dresses, she couldn't sew fast enough to make the kind of money she needed to provide for her family. So she began researching how she could buy and market other dresses. One weekend she drove to Los Angeles and came home with 20 dresses. Now, when people called to order a dress, Kathy explained that she couldn't sew a dress for them, but asked if they would like to come over and see the beautiful dresses she had purchased. Her dresses were a hit, and she purchased more. As her home filled up with dresses, it became time to open a store. At that time, banks didn't particularly favor making loans to women. One bank manager told her that she'd be out of business in less than a year. But hearing no just increased her determination. Another challenge for Kathy was traveling around the world as a buyer without ever being taught how to do it. But, as Kathy says, women can do anything in the world that they want to do. There will always be someone willing to help them, and when there isn't someone, there's always a book. Today, business at Kathleen's Bridal and Formal Wear is booming, and you can find her dresses advertised in 17, Your Prom, and Teen Prom magazines. Kathy's dream has come true. She's a successful dress designer with buying power and clout, and enjoys seeing her designs create magic on all the special days of a woman's life. The Box. Randy Escobar and her husband Tony owned a nutritional products company that sold products to health food stores and pharmacies. When the tragedy of 9/11 hit, followed by the anthrax scare, they found it nearly impossible to import the materials they needed to produce their products. They were suddenly unable to fill orders, and their business collapsed. During this difficult time, they clung together as a family and did what they could to get by. Randy still remembers just how much water you can add to milk before it doesn't taste like milk anymore. Randy had been praying for something that would help her family recover from financial ruin when a cardboard box arrived on her doorstep. Her first thought as she picked it up was, whatever it is, I hope there's not a bill inside, because I don't know how I could pay it. Inside the box was a health product from Isagenix. It had been sent from an old friend with a note that read, "Please follow the instructions, use the product, and share with others." Randy followed the instructions and had such wonderful results with the product that she signed up as a distributor with the company and began sharing it with everyone she knew. Within a few years, Randy had not only rescued their family business, but with her husband as her partner, went on to break network marketing industry records and become a multimillionaire. Today, she is a global leader with the Isagenix company. But what she is most proud of is that 26 people in her team have also become millionaires, and many more soon will be. A stupid idea. As a child, Debbie Fields loved eating and baking chocolate chip cookies. She also enjoyed sharing her cookies with friends and family. While baking cookies might seem to be a simple thing, it was something Debbie knew she was good at. In her teens, she began experimenting with recipes and developing her own special recipe. She was only 20 years old when she had the idea to open a chocolate chip cookie store. Debbie had married young, at the age of 19, and her husband told her the store was a stupid idea. Her parents echoed the sentiment, telling her that without a college degree, business experience, or money, she had no business going into the cookie business. Others just told her she was crazy. How could a business survive selling just chocolate chip cookies? But Debbie believed in her idea, and she wanted something more in her life. It was about gaining control, she said. So without support from her family, she visited banks and investors. After being turned down again and again, she finally got a bank to loan her $25,000 and in 1977 opened her first store in Palo Alto, California, Mrs. Fields' Chocolate Chippery. That humble store grew into a $500 million company with 650 retail bakeries in 11 different countries. Debbie became a business celebrity and inspired women entrepreneurs around the globe. She began franchising her stores in 1990 and sold the business to an investment group in the early 90s. She has continued to innovate and has since authored several New York Times best-selling cookbooks. Debbie believes that the biggest failure in life is never trying. Of course, successful women's businesses are not limited to stereotypical female activities such as clothes, design, and cooking. Women can succeed in any realm of financial endeavor. In fact, two of women entrepreneurs' greatest success stories are women in the petroleum business, their companies billing annually in excess of $100 million and $1 billion. One of the traits I often find women guilty of is undervaluing their abilities and talents. While it's common to find people with great talents who take their abilities for granted, women seem to be especially susceptible. What I do is no big deal, they tell themselves. Anyone can do it. The truth is, everyone can't. Where would Debbie Fields be if she had thought anyone can bake a cookie? We're the same way about our ideas. All too often we discount them, storing them in the bargain bins of our minds just because they seem obvious or simple to us. In doing so, we forget that the most brilliant of ideas are almost always simple in concept. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "None of us will ever accomplish anything excellent or commanding except when she listens to this whisper which is heard by her alone." Back when I was an advertising executive, our agency would focus test products to learn how to sell them, or to discover if they even were sellable. We'd fill a room with women, and then sit behind a two-way mirror and listen in as they discussed our product's benefits and faults. I'm sure if asked, those women would claim not to know anything about marketing. But the truth is, we were relying on them to tell us how to market. We valued and needed their input. They were teaching us. Bottom line, believe in yourself. Your opinions and ideas are far more valuable than you give them credit for. Soda pop, tuxedos, and Christmas gifts. The most money I've made in my lifetime was on a side project. It wasn't my first such venture, it was my 14th. For me, the habit of winning in the margins started when I was young. At the age of 13, I was working for low wages cleaning up construction sites. Such menial labor gave me ample time to think, though most of what I thought about was how I could quit cleaning construction sites. One afternoon, I noticed that the welders, who were paid well, would leave the job site every few hours and drive to a nearby convenience store for soda pop. I saw an opportunity. That night, on the way home from work, I bought an inexpensive cooler at a second-hand store, then purchased soda pop and candy bars in quantity from a nearby price club. The next day, I took my cooler to work, selling my products at $1 each. I doubled my income, making as much on the treats as I did pushing a broom. I found another opportunity when I worked at a formal wear shop. One day, my boss asked me to carry some boxes up from the cellar. When I had completed the task, I asked him what was in the boxes. "Old suits," he replied. I cut open a box and pulled out one of the suits. It was an old black tuxedo. It was from the 60s and looked like one of the Beatles' tuxedos. I asked him what he planned to do with the suits. "I'm just going to haul them out to the landfill." "Why don't we sell them?" I asked. Who would buy a 20-year-old used tuxedo? "I would," I said. "May I try selling them?" He rolled his eyes. "Sure. Just don't let it interfere with your work. And I'll tell you what, you can keep half of what you bring in." The sale of those suits brought in more than $16,000. My biggest success came 10 years later when I decided to self-publish a book I had written as a Christmas present for my daughters. I hadn't intended to publish the book, but after receiving many requests for copies, I decided to print a few. The first year, that little book netted me $20,000. I reinvested my earnings. In the second year, I earned more than $400,000. The third year, I earned nearly $4.5 million. That's when I quit my day job. You could say that I, and the others I've written about here, were just lucky. Of course we were. But as George S. Clayson wrote, "Opportunity is a haughty goddess who wastes not her time with the unprepared." Was it luck that caused me and my colleagues to try again and again to find ways to succeed financially? Was it luck that I noticed a trend with my book? Was it luck that I consulted all the experts I could find about making my book a success? Was it luck that I took copious notes on each marketing venture I tried, evaluating its successes and failures? The bottom line is this: I would never have been lucky had I not been looking for ways to increase my earning ability. For free ideas on how to win in the margins, visit my website today at winninginthemargins.com and enter WIN when asked for your passkey. Double your wealth. While most of those in the previous examples hit it big, even earning just a percentage of your regular income each month goes a long way toward building your wealth. Remember what I said about compound interest in Lesson 3? If you're earning an average household income and are saving 10%, you're putting away about $418 a month. If you increase your income by an extra $418 a month and apply it to your nest egg, it is, in the long-term accumulation of your wealth, the equivalent of doubling your income. Again, your wealth accumulation at 10%, the first year is $5,309, and by year 40 is $2.8 million. But by contributing just an extra $418 a month directly to your nest egg, your savings at the end of the first year are more than $10,000, and by the 40th year are worth more than $5.6 million. By increasing your nest egg contribution through earning or saving an additional 10% each month, the average household will achieve millionaire status more than 7 years earlier. Clearly, the path of extra income is worth pursuing. But where do you find the extra income? As demonstrated by my friend who walked with his head down looking for money, it's all around you. From my experience, your greatest success winning in the margins will likely come through paying attention to your talents, abilities, and the unique opportunities that already surround you. I suggested earlier that there's another way to double your contribution to your nest egg that doesn't include extra earnings, and that's savings. It's the second way to win in the margins. Successful wealth-building women understand that the world is designed to take their money. Never forget that. Billions of dollars have been spent to suggest to your mind what will make you happy, what you should look like, what you should drive, eat, and wear, and ultimately, how you should spend your money. The collective power of those suggestions is probably far stronger than you realize. Just look at a 20-year-old fashion magazine. What were we thinking? Or was someone thinking for us? Early in my advertising career, I wrote a radio commercial for a local chain of copy centers. In this commercial, I depicted a man talking about the copy center's new, longer hours with a customer who showed up at his store at 5 minutes past 5 o'clock, needing exactly 3,000 copies by morning. The radio spots ran, and to our surprise, the managers at each of the 7 copy centers reported that they had had a rush of people showing up at 5:05 p.m. needing exactly 3,000 copies by morning. In the same way that the millionaire mentality recognizes that the world is designed to take our money, it also knows that the average American has been psychologically conditioned to consume and spend. Market researchers and retail anthropologists specifically study your shopping behavior to more efficiently target you. On the Internet, computers track your spending habits and systematically parade offers in front of you. Politicians and bureaucrats increase fees and taxes. Determined salespeople take courses to learn how to get you to part with your money. And it's getting worse. Marketers are targeting younger and younger consumers, addicting them to a lifestyle of overconsumption. From 1980 to today, advertising to children in America has increased more than tenfold, from $100 million a year to more than $1 billion. Successful wealth builders recognize the nature of the real world and therefore carefully scrutinize every expenditure. They learn to win in the margins by keeping more of what they earn. While most of today's self-help books spout messages about thinking big, J. Paul Getty argued in How to Be Rich that the problem of financial failure is often attributable to the inability to think small. The millionaire mentality, he wrote, gives meticulous attention to even the smallest details and misses no opportunities to reduce costs in his own or his employer's business. We can change that too, and misses no opportunity to reduce costs in her own business and household. This millionaire mentality can be applied to all aspects of financial endeavor, from business to personal spending. There are 4 key mindsets that characterize the effective wealth builder. 1. The millionaire mentality carefully considers each expenditure. 2. The millionaire mentality believes that freedom and power are better than momentary pleasure. 3. The millionaire mentality does not equate spending with happiness. And 4. The millionaire mentality protects her nest egg. I will examine each of these millionaire mentalities in greater detail.
Mindset 1. The millionaire mentality carefully considers each expenditure.
There are 3 questions that the successful wealth builder asks herself before she parts with her money. 1. Is this expenditure really necessary? 2. Is this expenditure contributing to my wealth or taking from it? And 3. Is this an impulse purchase or a planned purchase? Let's start with 1. Is this expenditure really necessary? Or is it possible to get the same personal effect without using money, or using less of it? One of the best-dressed women I know is a single mother living on a very limited income. How can you afford such a beautiful wardrobe? I asked her. She smiled and said it was her secret. Later on, she offered to tell me. I only buy used clothing, high quality, but pre-owned by some rich person. I let them lose the value. Same effect, without the financial effect. A few years ago, I was in Venice, standing near the gondolas by Piazza San Marco. I had lived in Italy for more than a year and spoke enough Italian to be conversant. The gondoliers, however, assumed that I was just another American tourist, so they didn't worry about what they said in front of me. How much do I charge this group? One of the gondoliers asked. €50 for Japanese, €40 for Americans, €20 for Italians. How do you determine what to charge? I asked the man in Italian. Embarrassed that I had understood him, he finally answered, whatever they will pay. More prices than you think are determined in this very way, and as such are usually far more negotiable than you think. This doesn't mean you have to become a hardened haggler. Simple, soft-voiced inquiry is often just as effective, if not more so. Recently, I was shopping for some computer equipment at a local electronics dealer. After the salesperson had demonstrated the equipment and quoted a price, I simply asked him if they matched the lowest price available. I hate buying something and the next day finding it cheaper somewhere else, I explained. He thought about it, then said, just a minute. He pulled up a comparison site on the internet, and we immediately found the same equipment available for $140 less. There's the price, I said. He not only sold it to me for the lower price, but he threw in a few other complimentary items as well. Many people don't get what they want out of life simply because they don't ask. The 7 golden words. A salesman friend of mine was trying to negotiate a deal with a large client. When he quoted his bid, his client's forehead creased with concern. "Is that the best you can do?" he asked. My friend began to squirm. He left the room and called his boss. "We've got to do better," he said. His boss gave him a better price. Newly confident with his bid, my friend sat back down with his client. we can go 3% less." The man still looked concerned. "Is that the best you can do?" My friend, more certain that he was about to lose the account, went back to the phone. He again talked to his boss, who conceded 1 more % discount. Afraid that it wasn't going to be enough, my friend threw in a portion of his own sales commission. Still, the client didn't seem impressed. "Is that really the best you can do?" My friend sighed. "I'm sorry," he said, "but it is." The man smiled. "Fine, I'll sign the order. I was just making sure that it really was your best offer." Winning in the margins means pushing the limit to see just how low you can purchase, especially on the big-ticket items. A financial consultant once said to me, "It drives me crazy the way people compartmentalize their money. They'll clip coupons to save 35 cents on a can of soup, then throw thousands away on a big purchase because they didn't bother to compare prices or even ask if they could get it for less." Just 7 simple words. Is that the best you can do? Of all the advice in this book, the 7 golden words are most likely to provide you the most immediate and surprising success. A friend of mine who was in the middle of building a home claimed to have saved more than $25,000 by using the 7 golden words. And, he added, the subcontractors all thought that he was especially smart and actually added free upgrades. I've had several readers report saving more than $1,000 within a few hours of learning the 7 golden words. In fact, we hear these success stories regularly. Not that this surprises me. I have a large and growing collection of my own. The 7 golden words work. Not always, but enough of the time to make them worth your while. A new baby. Ashley recently adopted a baby girl. Besides the normal fees associated with the adoption agency and lawyers, the medical costs associated with the birth were well over $20,000. Having used the 7 golden words before, she decided to see if she could lower this medical expense as well. After reaching the hospital's accounts payable office, Ashley first thanked the hospital representative for the care they had given her baby and her baby's birth mother. She then quickly described the events surrounding her baby's birth and kindly asked if the outstanding balance was the best they could do. After a few minutes on hold, the accounts payable representative returned, happily saying that the hospital was willing to reduce the bill by 80% if she would pay the bill in full within 30 days, a savings of $16,000. A bedroom set. Patricia had saved 3 long years to purchase a bedroom set. When she had finally saved enough, she went to the furniture store to pick it out. She found the set of her dreams and wanted to purchase it immediately, but having read the 5 lessons, decided to sleep on her decision. As soon as she got home, she realized that she hadn't used the 7 golden words. She called the salesperson and asked him if the $6,000 price tag was the best he could do. "No," he replied, "I can give you 30% off." It had worked so well, she tried it again and asked if that was the best he could do. "Well," he said, "let's make it an even $2,000 off, and I'll pay the sales tax and delivery." Using the 7 golden words, Patricia saved more in 5 minutes than she had in a whole year. Ruby slippers. Lisa was a little hesitant about using the 7 golden words, but eventually decided to give them a try. What did I have to lose, she reasoned. She found her opportunity a few days later when her friend introduced her to a new shoe store. Lisa had already selected several pairs when she came upon some expensive red patent leather pumps. In spite of the price, she added them to her purchases. Lisa had noticed that one of the other customers in the store had used a $10 off coupon. Lisa said to the sales clerk, "I don't have a coupon, but can I still get the discount?" "Sure," the woman said. Lisa thanked the woman. After the sales clerk had rung up Lisa's shoes, Lisa looked at the price and said, "Is that the best you can do on this price?" The lady looked at her for a moment, then reached into a drawer and pulled out a special coupon and scanned it. The price changed. "There you are. That's an additional $80 off your purchase," she said. Lisa was almost speechless, but managed to thank the woman again. When Lisa got home, she captured her savings by putting the $80 she had saved in her nest egg. As consumers, we leave a lot more money on the table than we realize. A woman at one of my seminars was a day manager at a national chain clothing store. It's corporate policy, she told us, that any of our employees can discount up to 30% off any product at any time. All a customer needs to do is ask. How long have you worked for that store? I asked. About 5 years. In all that time, how many customers have asked for a discount? She thought about it for a moment, then replied, maybe 3. The 7 golden words are one of my favorite tricks in this book. I hear more success stories from this technique than any other. I personally have saved more than $100,000 using these words. The 7 golden words don't require haggling. In fact, the more softly and kindly you use them, the better they work. That's because this approach isn't confrontational, it's cooperative. A few years back, a man came up to me after one of my seminars. "Those golden words of yours don't work," he said bluntly. "Really?" I asked. "You've tried them?" "Well, not exactly. I got my own method." "Tell me about it," I said. "I look them in the eye and say, 'It ain't worth that.' And in 40 years, it's never worked." I said. "Think of it this way. If I'm at a book signing and you come up to me, pick up my book, look at the price, and say, 'It ain't worth that,' you've just offended me. In fact, I don't want you to have my book. However, imagine the opposite approach. You say, 'This book of yours is worth twice this amount. Unfortunately, I can't even afford this price. Do you think that's the best the store can do? What do you think I'm going to do? If I don't buy it for you myself, I'm definitely going to talk to a store manager to see if such a wise, kind man can get a much-deserved discount." He nodded but didn't get it. "To each his own," he said. The 7 golden words are engaging. They are inviting people to be magnanimous and feel good about themselves. What I love most about the 7 golden words is that they are especially empowering for single mothers. Single mothers are constantly struggling with the balance of working more to provide for their family's needs or spending more time with their children. These women are heroes of mine. If a young single mother learns this one powerful technique, saves $100 a month using it, and puts it away in her nest egg, she'll retire with a fortune. Sure, retirement may seem a lifetime away, but wouldn't a $25,000 or $100,000 cushion in the bank change the way she views life? Just one thing. In junior high school, I had a wrestling coach who said, "Evans, I don't care how many moves you know. I just want you to be better at one of them than anyone else in the state." He told me a story about a wrestler who had practiced a takedown move every day until no one could stop him. He would take down his opponent, then just let him go and take him down again. He won first place in state every year. Why am I telling you the story? If you can perfect just this one move, just 7 simple words, then remember to capture your savings, you'll see remarkable success. Less is more. As long as we're asking the question, is this expenditure really necessary? Something should be said about consumption. Americans overconsume at record and embarrassing levels. The quest to have more can be seen in our homes as well as our waistlines. In 1950, the average home was 1,100 square feet. In 1970, it had increased to 1,400 square feet, and by the year 2004, the average home was precisely 2,348 square feet, despite the fact that families have gotten smaller. As a nation, we are spending more and enjoying it less. Strangely, more people surveyed in the 50s described themselves as rich than do today. Curtailing the pattern of overconsumption is an important step, not just in saving, but in freeing ourselves from our possessions. Psychologically, in spite of all we've been told or sold, more is less and less is more. This is corroborated by a study that showed that 86% of Americans felt happier after having voluntarily cut back on consumption. Now on to the second and third question the successful wealth builder asks herself before she parts with her money. 2. Is this expenditure contributing to my wealth or taking from it? Of course, not all expenditures can be assets, but continually asking this question helps wealth builders redirect the use of their money. It's no coincidence that the wealthy put their money in their homes instead of their cars. Homes usually appreciate. Cars almost always depreciate. 3. Is this an impulse purchase or a planned purchase? Am I being pressured to make an expenditure I'm not certain about? Candy bars and magazines line the checkout stands like thugs, waiting to jump you as you pull out your wallet or purse. Late-night infomercials come at you when you're tired and your resistance is down. The impulse buy is the mainstay of the American retail establishment. The layout of the grocery store testifies to this, which is why the essentials, meat, eggs, and milk, are always at the back of the store, making you pass aisle after aisle of possible impulse purchases. And it works. Most grocery stores estimate that more than 50% of purchases are impulse purchases. You've heard the adage, never shop with an empty stomach? This wisdom should be applied whenever money is concerned. Never shop with an empty ego. Buy what you mean to buy. Whether it's for groceries or a new car, save time and money by shopping with a list. Going once, going twice. Early in our marriage, my wife and I made a commitment never to make any large purchases on impulse. If the salesperson said he needed an answer right now, then the answer was no. In nearly 25 years, we haven't once regretted walking away from a strong-arm sales pitch. Not once. In fact, whenever we found ourselves being pressured by an aggressive salesperson, one who was insisting that we had to buy now or let a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity pass, it was very empowering to be able to say no. The funny thing is that despite all the threats that the opportunity would pass, it never did. Not once that I can remember. But many times we passed. Often, after a good night's sleep, we decided that we really could live without an automatic sock stacker after all. Again, the 5 lessons are not about deprivation. They're about not wasting money. Buy whatever you want if you have the money. Just make sure that you really want it and will enjoy it for at least as long as you have to pay for it. Capture your savings. Everything you've just learned about saving is only half the process. Whenever you save money from using one of these techniques, it's important that you capture those savings by moving the money saved into your nest egg. For instance, a friend of mine was about to pay off a hospital bill and had already written out the check for around $1,500 when he decided to try the 7 golden words. The hospital apologetically told him that it could only discount the bill by 10%. He was delighted, of course. He tore up the check he had written and wrote 2 more, one for the revised hospital bill of $1,350 and the second to his nest egg for the $150 he had just saved. There's another psychological benefit to this technique. Have you ever trained an animal? The very foundation of successful training is to reward desired behavior. The same principle is true for humans. You're no animal, but whenever you save money, then capture those savings, you're conditioning yourself for more success. The more you pay yourself and watch your nest egg grow, the stronger your habit will become. Remember, if you're able to save just $100 a month and you faithfully transfer it to your nest egg, in 40 years, compounded at the average S&P 500 rate of 10.2%, that little extra savings will be worth close to $700,000.
Mindset 2. The millionaire mentality believes that freedom and power are better than momentary pleasure.
The sirens of credit are luring you to the rocks of disaster. Their enticing song, "Buy now, pay later," is indeed truth in advertising, though it was certainly not intended to be. Pay is exactly what America is doing. The price we pay to have it now is quite clear. Broken marriages, homes, health, and lives. The successful wealth builder understands the danger of debt and knows that the primary way to avoid it is by delaying gratification. A decade ago, Time magazine reported that brain research suggests that emotions, not IQ, may be the true measure of human intelligence, and the ability to delay gratification is one of the key indicators of emotional intelligence. Interestingly, it is also an indicator of future success. The marshmallow experiment. A group of scientists created an experiment to test emotional intelligence. They told 4-year-old children that they could have one marshmallow now, or if they could wait while the researcher ran an errand, they could have 2. They then placed a marshmallow in front of each child and left the room. Some of the children waited for the second marshmallow, while others immediately devoured the one in front of them. The follow-up research was most fascinating. Those children who could delay gratification generally grew up to be better adjusted, more popular, adventurous, confident, and dependable. Those who couldn't were more likely to be lonely, easily frustrated, and stubborn. They buckled under stress and shied away from challenges. In addition, those who could delay gratification also scored an average of 210 points higher on the SATs. My father's epiphany. I'll never forget the night my father called us together for a special family meeting. It was after we had lost our home, and all of us children had gathered in the living room of our little duplex. The mood in our home that night was as somber as a funeral. My father looked distraught. We didn't know why he had brought us together, but from his countenance, we knew it couldn't be good. He said, "I've spent the last 3 days figuring out why, after all these years of hard work, I have nothing to show for it but bills. Do you know where it all goes?" "To us?" one of my brothers asked. "No," he said grimly. "I wish it had. But it doesn't. It goes to interest. All those heartbeats went to paying interest to make someone else wealthy. Delay gratification. Never borrow money." Earlier in the 3rd lesson, I demonstrated the power of compound interest. Never forget that compound interest is just as powerful working against you as it is working for you. What might seem like a small expense now can, in the long run, steal your wealth. Simply put, there are 2 kinds of people, those who earn interest and those who pay it. That's the fundamental difference between the wealthy and the desperate. The millionaire mentality sees clearly the danger of credit and knows that freedom and power are infinitely better than short-lived pleasure. But I deserve it. An employee of mine desired a new car. It was too expensive for her income, but she was intent on convincing me that it was the right choice for her. "My husband's about to get a raise. Why shouldn't I have a nice car? Don't I deserve it?" Deserve it? She had just regurgitated the greatest marketing sham ever propagated on the American consumer, the result of years of advertising brainwashing. She deserves what? To find happiness based on something that will decay and lose value within a year, yet will continue to financially enslave her long after her infatuation with the metal is gone. In the words of my teenage daughter, is this a good thing? After several discussions, she reluctantly chose not to buy the car. A year later, we revisited her decision. "I'm so glad I didn't buy that car," she said. "It doesn't even interest me anymore. And my husband didn't get the raise we had planned on. Had we bought that car, we would have found ourselves deep in debt and struggling just to make payments." The next time you hear someone say, "You deserve it," red flags should go up in your mind. Someone is trying to take your wealth. Someone is trying to steal your dreams for themselves. What you really deserve is peace of mind, individual freedom, and personal power. The payday loans trap. Remember, it's them versus us. The payday loan industry is big business and getting bigger. In just 8 years, it's grown from $10 billion to $85 billion. And 2/3 of those funding this industry growth are women. Women in financial trouble. In fact, one payday lender's business plan unabashedly declares that welfare-to-work mothers are an excellent opportunity for check cashing and cash advance businesses. Predatory, exploitative, entrapment. These are just some of the terms used to describe this industry. That should be warning enough to stay away. A payday loan is a short-term loan intended to supposedly help the borrower get by until the next payday. While there are laws regulating how much interest can be charged by financial institutions, these businesses get around these laws by charging fees rather than interest. These fees typically account for 15% of the loan. If you do the math, you'll realize that if you continue to repeat or roll over the loan, your actual annual interest may be as high as 400%. I've personally witnessed the damage using these loans can cause. An employee of mine had gotten behind on her bills and decided to get out of the bind by using a payday loan. Already short on cash, now with 15% less cash a month, she was really in trouble. She found herself using cash advances more and more. One day she came to me in tears, embarrassed to tell me what she had done. It was so short-sighted, she said, it just seemed like a quick fix. It was quick, but not a fix. Eventually, the cure became worse than the disease. Using payday loans can turn a temporary financial problem into a permanent one. The truth of the plastic. In 1968, credit card debt was $8 billion. Today, 40 years later, that number has increased by more than 100 times. With so much wealth at stake, it's no wonder banks and retail businesses work so hard to extend you credit. There were 5.3 billion offers for new credit cards in 2007 alone, and their efforts are paying off. In 1970, only 17% of American households had a bank-issued credit card. Today, Americans own more than 1 billion credit cards. 1 in 7 carry 10 or more credit cards. I met a woman at one of my seminars who had 27 different credit cards. When she ran out of money on one card, she simply applied for another. In addition to credit cards, there are other credit-inducing tactics you might not have considered. A common credit sales tactic is the no-pain add-on purchase. You've likely been victimized by it. As a teenager, I worked at a fast food restaurant. Whenever we took an order, we were required to ask customers if they wanted fries or a drink to go with their order. Initially, I thought if they wanted fries or a drink, they would have asked for it. Not so. To my surprise, more than half the people I asked changed their order. This technique works on larger purchases as well, from cars to houses. Unfortunately, outside the fast food world, there's interest involved. Would you like a refrigerator to go with that house? You've just come to the end of the long and tedious process of qualifying for a home loan. Before the last signature is inked, you're asked, do you need any appliances? We could easily add a few luxuries onto that loan. How about a refrigerator? What most home buyers don't consider is that this additional purchase goes right on the end of their 30-year mortgage. Even at a low interest rate like 5%, after 5 years, the average cost for a $1,000 refrigerator is nearly double the sales price, and Americans wonder where their money goes. What kind of fool? The poor and the uneducated are particularly susceptible to interest schemes. That's one of the reasons they stay poor. Back when I worked at an advertising agency, we had a client who rented out electronic appliances. You've seen similar television commercials. Come to Sham's Rent to Own, where you can have it today. As I was listing the weekly price of a VCR for a television commercial, something didn't look right. I called the store manager. This price couldn't be right, I said. It says $19.99 a week for this VCR. No, that's right. $20 a week for how long? A year? I almost choked. You're kidding me. That adds up to more than $1,000 for this VCR. It couldn't have cost you more than $100. Actually, we got it for $60. What kind of fool pays more than $1,000 for a $60 VCR? I asked. People who can't wait. Successful nest eggers are emotionally intelligent. They can wait, even when it's not the easiest course of action. Because of my belief in the 5 lessons, my wife and I decided before we were married that we would never go into debt. We found the engagement ring and the diamond we wanted, but I didn't have enough money to pay for it. Believe me, I was sorely tempted to break my rule and go into debt. I had other pressures besides the jeweler. To start, a beautiful fiancée whom I wanted to impress, not to mention a future father-in-law who was certain that I was going to keep his daughter barefoot and pregnant. But with my fiancée's support, we held fast to the rule. We put down money to hold the diamond, then had a cubic zirconium set into the ring. No one knew the difference except us. A few months later, I paid off the diamond and we swapped the stones. For the successful nest egger, freedom and power are infinitely better than momentary satisfaction.
Mindset 3. The millionaire mentality does not equate spending with happiness.
A friend of mine had an especially hard morning at work and found herself running to the store at her lunch hour. I bought a $500 dress that I didn't even want, she said. It just somehow made me feel better. Like my friend, too many women have adopted shopping as catharsis. Shopping is therapy, says a television commercial. Money can buy happiness, just don't pay retail. Equating spending with happiness is the first step to financial self-destruction. Recently, I met a woman whose daughter was working 3 jobs trying to keep up with her $50,000 credit card debt. What did she spend all that money on? I asked. Stuff? Clothes and stuff? She had a bad marriage and she's just trying to fill the void. Unfortunately, all she does now is work. Compulsive behaviors are the cause of many financial disasters. I remember signing copies of the 5 lessons at a bookstore in Las Vegas and hearing story after story of lives and nest eggs squandered by people with compulsive gambling habits. The same is true of compulsive spending. A friend of mine has a client who has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in purchases she doesn't value or use. Her home is cluttered with stacks of unopened boxes and department store sacks with price tags still attached. It's gotten so bad that she cannot sleep in her own bed because it's covered with junk. She's not really shopping for anything except the high that comes from shopping. Another friend of mine divorced his wife after she refused to get help for her shopping problem before she could spend him into oblivion. As he helped her pack her belongings, he found, among many other things, 3 identical Chanel purses still in their boxes with their hefty price tags still attached. While these examples are extreme, they are demonstrative of the power of this addiction. Compulsive spending is still not listed by the American Psychiatric Association as a distinct disorder, but some experts believe it might soon be. Compulsive spending follows the same pattern of other addictive cycles. With the compulsive spender, the purchase of something creates a temporary psychological high. Then, after that high dissipates, and it always does, the addict finds herself dealing with the aftermath of her choices, usually a combination of negative emotions, guilt, fear, and shame. The addict, now suffering from this painful low, naturally seeks relief, so she goes shopping again to create a new high, establishing a powerful and dangerous cycle. One of the distinct problems with this form of addiction is the lack of negative social consequence. While a drunk is shunned, looked down on, or thrown in jail, the compulsive spender is praised and adored by salespeople, thanked by the recipients of their gifts, and even extolled by the President of the United States for doing their patriotic duty by spending. Of course, compulsive shopping is not just a woman's issue, and some research suggests that compulsive shopping is on the rise among men. Still, it's my experience that this problem is more often a woman's addiction of choice. If you find yourself purchasing things you don't need, just for the thrill of buying, or if you knowingly buy things you can't afford, you might need help. There's good news. Remember, just because you have compulsive tendencies doesn't mean you're doomed to financial failure. In fact, the opposite is true. Your weakness may become your greatest asset. Remember what Heather wrote in the foreword about changing her behavior? She took her compulsive shopping habits, redirected them to purchasing precious metals instead of junk, and in a relatively short time created a healthy nest egg. The successful nest egger fosters gratitude as a strategy against materialism and unhappiness. One of the great cures for consumption is found in the character trait of gratitude. We live in a world of abundance. The things that bring the greatest joy are not reserved for the wealthy alone. The simplest of pleasures can bring the greatest happiness. What price can we put on inner peace, or health, or friendship, or love? Those who forget to be grateful for what they have often waste their lives and wealth looking for more. Their thirst becomes unquenchable as they seek to buy what cannot be bought. It doesn't matter if these people have $1 or $1 billion, because they will never have contentment or happiness. They may be in a high tax bracket, but they will never be truly wealthy.
Mindset 4. The millionaire mentality protects the nest egg.
Successful nest eggers do not risk what they cannot afford to lose. This applies to both investing and living. High-risk, get-rich-quick schemes and other forms of gambling do not appeal to them. When I surveyed my female readers about what they felt was their biggest financial weakness, the number one answer was being an easy touch. Angela, this is not her real name, was widowed at a young age. With 3 small children, this could have been a financial nightmare. However, her husband had insurance and investments and left her a significant amount of money. About 5 years after her husband's death, Angela remarried. She was happy for companionship and madly in love. Her new husband, a real estate developer, convinced her not only to invest all her money in his business, but to mortgage her house, which was paid off as well. Less than 2 years into the marriage, not only had he lost all of her money, but she caught him cheating on her. They divorced, leaving Angela emotionally and financially broken and living in near poverty with her children. Most women and men want to be trusting. They want to believe in a happy ending and that the person they love will look out for their best interest. Women need to acknowledge that while this mindset is a beautiful hope, it's also a potential danger, and they should put appropriate safeguards in place. Wise behavior is not a matter of trust. It's a matter of wisdom. That significant other who might lose all your money might actually have your best interests at heart. It doesn't matter. Throughout my financial history, I have lost more money to people who meant me well than to people who meant me harm. In other words, more financial harm has come from my friends than from my enemies. Your spouse may be the kindest, most loving, and trustworthy person on the planet, but it doesn't mean that he can protect your assets. Good people lose money every day. Angela should have decided what she could afford to lose before she put her money and her children's future at risk. Before she remarried, Angela should have transferred the home and much of her assets into a trust for her children, guaranteeing that they would always be taken care of. Proper insurance. Insurance has been around for a long time. In fact, insurance existed around 3000 BC in China. It was later used in ancient Babylon and by the Phoenicians, Hindus, and Greeks. Purchasing the proper amount of insurance is an important financial issue. My parents didn't believe in insurance. Early in their marriage, they had purchased a policy that didn't pay out when they needed it, and they decided that insurance was just a scam. That's why, when my father broke his legs, he didn't have insurance. Even with all the pain I had experienced growing up without insurance, my first year of marriage, I followed my parents' example. Fortunately, my wife Carrie felt differently. She found an inexpensive health insurance policy for university students and applied for it. 3 weeks after she did, I was rushed to the hospital for an emergency appendectomy. The cost of the surgery would have put us deep in debt. Thankfully, due to my wife's wisdom, we were spared much pain. Successful wealth builders purchase proper insurance to protect their growing wealth. A study conducted by a Harvard Law School professor found that medical bills and other financial effects of illness or injury contributed to nearly half of the personal bankruptcy filings in the United States. Having proper insurance can make the difference between financial peace of mind and catastrophe. Successful wealth builders ask themselves, is the person I'm trusting with my wealth sufficiently skilled to handle my money? In The Richest Man in Babylon, George S. Clason tells the story of a man who entrusts his hard-earned money to his friend, a bricklayer, to purchase precious gems. Of course, the bricklayer knows nothing about precious gems, and he returns with worthless pieces of glass. Trust bricklayers with advice about bricks, says his mentor. Be especially careful with your money when it comes to family. This is what I call the brother-in-law syndrome. As your wealth grows, you will be set upon by others, usually in-laws it seems to me, to fund their schemes and business ventures. They will often use emotional manipulation to get you to part with your money. Be kind and simply say, let's take your plan to an expert in the field. In most cases, this will end the inquiry. It's not easy to say no to a loved one, but seeing them lose your money is worse, much worse. And in the end, no one is happy. Burnt toast syndrome. One of the most destructive of all female financial behaviors is what I call burnt toast syndrome. The first time I shared this discovery with a group of women, I was surprised at how affected they were. In fact, they were speechless. A few of them started crying. Afterward, I asked how many of them were victims of burnt toast syndrome. Every hand in the room shot up. This is how I explain burnt toast syndrome. You're making breakfast for your family, and there's enough bread for only one piece of toast per person. You accidentally burn one of them. Who takes the burnt piece? The answer women usually give me is me. The same holds true for their finances. Even though women live longer than men and need more retirement money set aside, most simply don't do it, which is why the average income for a woman over 65 is less than $7,000 a year. One of the reasons for this disturbing trend is that others gradually and quietly steal their retirements from them. Children and other relatives often prey on women, mothers, aunts, grandmothers, to part with very real future needs for those relatives' immediate selfish wants. It's a daughter who needs an expensive prom dress, or the son who needs that $200 pair of basketball shoes. In the moment, it often seems easier to just give in and surrender your future funds. Some women thrive on the attention they receive as a benefactor. They don't steal from me, I'm happy to give it away, one woman said foolishly, trying to convince herself that she was doing good. One man I know from a wealthy family has learned to play his mother like a violin. At the age of 30 and with several children, he's never held a job for more than a few months. His mother is disappointed with his habits, but is unwilling to let her grandchildren suffer. She's a reluctant enabler and continues to do great harm to both her son and her grandchildren. Let me be clear. This is absolutely wrong. It's wrong on two levels. First, it's never okay to give up a need for someone else's wants. Never. You can try to rationalize it, but it's just plain stupidity. Second, the lessons taught to the recipient are remarkably damaging. How would you feel if you discovered that your children were stealing from an elderly widow's pension to buy themselves concert tickets? Or conned a woman down the street out of her Social Security check so they could buy a motorcycle? Obviously, you would be disgusted, but that's exactly what you're doing when you give up that future income for their wants. Those who practice this kind of giving are practicing a kind of financial suicide and raising children to be selfish and entitled. They are creating pathetic, weak people who, unable to stand on their own feet, will continue to prey on others their entire lives. As Clementine Paddleford wrote, "Never put a wishbone, daughter, where a backbone ought to be." If you're not willing to do what's right because it's right for you, then do it because it's right for your children. In the end, whether you win in the margins through creating extra income or through savings, both will get you to where you want to be. But serious wealth accumulators employ both to help them reach their goals.
Lesson 5. Give back.
What I spent is gone. What I kept I lost. But what I gave away will be mine forever. Ethel Percy Andrus. Ultimately, the most honorable and enjoyable use of money is in serving others. Freely giving of our wealth is also the only way to fully protect ourselves from our wealth. Yes, money is a powerful ally, but it can also be a spiritual and emotional enemy. While money is an inescapable part of life, it's not life. If money becomes what you live for, you will eventually conclude that life is not worth living. I was signing books at a bookstore when I noticed a young woman in line who was clearly very excited to meet me. When it was her turn to approach my table, she could barely constrain herself. "Mr. Evans," she exclaimed, "I've wanted to meet you my entire life." Flattered, I replied, "So you liked my books?" "Never read them," she quickly replied. I looked at her with amusement. "Then why did you want to meet me?" A big smile crossed her face. "I'm one of your Christmas box house kids." Her words hit me with great impact. "How are you?" I asked. "I'm great," she replied. She put her arm around the blond teenage boy standing next to her. "This is my brother Eric," she said. "My caseworker told me that if it wasn't for you, we probably would not have been adopted into the same family. I've always wanted to thank you for my brother." I asked if she wanted to help me sign books, and for the next hour, we drank slushies and talked about life. Success in life cannot be measured on a balance sheet. I believe that the truest measure of achievement is the degree to which we've learned to love. And service, through sharing our wealth and our time, is love made visible. Financial karma. While generosity feeds the soul, ironically, it also feeds the pocketbook. I believe that we receive as we give. It is written in the Bible, "Will a man rob God? Yet ye have robbed me." But you say, "Wherein have we robbed thee?" In tithes and offerings. Prove me now herewith, if I will not open you the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing, that there shall not be room enough to receive it. Malachi 2, 8-10. While I don't believe that this promise written in the Bible applies solely to financial blessings, I believe there are karmic principles attached to wealth. We get back when we give. As such, it's important to give not just after we've achieved wealth, but as part of the process. I have tithed 10% of my income since I was 8 years old, and in spite of the hardships my family has sometimes faced, I have never felt the loss of this money. Rather, I have felt specifically blessed for my contributions. On one occasion, when my business was doing poorly, I called my accountant and asked him to review my financial records over the past year to see if I had in fact paid a true tithe of 10%. He called back the next day and told me that I was $800 short. I wrote a check immediately and sent it off. The next day I had 3 calls from former clients needing work done immediately. Coincidence? Maybe. But I don't think so. I've heard similar stories from friends and associates of different faiths from around the world. In addition to sharing your wealth, you have a responsibility to share the lessons of proper money management with others. Within 24 hours of hearing this audiobook, share this audiobook with a spouse, a child, a girlfriend, or a colleague. Then, as your life improves, share your successes with others. Your example will encourage them to follow your lead. As you share these principles, you will see firsthand the gift of giving back. Teaching the 5 lessons to others will help you internalize them and become better prepared to live and enjoy the fruits of them yourself.
Conclusion. Is it ever too late to start?
A reporter was in my office interviewing me when he noticed the cover of the 5 lessons on my desk. He asked me what the book was about. I briefly explained the 5 principles of wealth, then invited him to attend one of my seminars. "I could use that," he said, "but I'm afraid it's too late." To my surprise, his eyes welled up with tears. My daughter called this morning. She needs money for college. I had to tell her that I can't help her. I just don't have it. Is it ever too late to live these principles? My answer is a resounding no. Yes, it can be too late to take full advantage of the power of compound interest, but progress is progress. It's never too late to do the right thing, or the smart thing, and enjoy the benefits it brings. Harkening back to my niece's story, just 1 year into practicing the 5 lessons, she was light years ahead of where she had been and was free of the daily fear and bondage of debt. She and her husband were already enjoying more of the blessings of living in this free and abundant country. Most important, they had hope, and hope is always worth striving for. We end where we began. Life is not about money. It's about God. It's about love. It's about family and relationships. In sharing with you these principles, it's my hope that you will always give back, that you might find life's true abundance. All millionaires die, but there are no dead millionaires. Their wealth passes on. As Ray Kroc, the founder of McDonald's, was fond of saying, "I've never seen a Brinks truck following a hearse." If you have lived successfully, your estate will consist of more than material possessions, and your legacy will be more than a ledger sheet. Remember this: you may use your wealth wisely, find true abundance, and live, as Mark Twain said, so that even the undertaker mourns your passing. In the end, this is true wealth. Now I'd like to end with this final note. I have an idea, a big idea. But before I share it with you, I want you to take a moment and seriously consider this question. What kind of a world would we live in if only the bad people had money? It would be a dark world indeed. There would be no parks or museums. Schools and churches would shut down, and hospitals would help only the elite few. Most of us would be enslaved, if not with physical chains, then with financial ones. With this in mind, I'll share my idea, or maybe I should say dream. Over the past 20 years, I've seen the power of the 5 lessons change people's lives, not only financially, but emotionally, mentally, and spiritually as well. I've seen my wonderful readers give back by reaching out and helping one another to succeed. I wish that more good people had wealth. This has led me to my dream. I dream of creating a community of 1 million compassionate millionaires, wealthy people who use their power to improve their lives, their communities, and the world around them. We're accomplishing this dream with an online wealth club called the 5 Lessons Institute that provides powerful weekly mentoring, teleclasses, monthly and weekly plans of action, and powerful tools to aid you in your wealth accumulation. As a member of this community, you'll be able to share with other members and watch your wealth grow and the community's wealth grow. We'll do it together. Imagine being one of 1 million people around the globe following the same success strategy. We have already established relationships with hundreds of major retailers who offer special discounts to our community. Talk about strength in numbers. While others are treading financial waters, we'll be swimming ahead to success. Obviously, it will be expensive to run this institute, but by spreading the cost out over the whole community, you'll receive thousands of dollars of benefits for very little. The price to join the 5 Lessons Wealth Club is very low, just $10 to join and $9.95 a month per family. And because we believe in giving back, part of that will go directly to charity. Incredible idea, isn't it? And timely. If the economy is the Titanic, this is a lifeboat. But this plan is helpful not only right now in a time of economic crisis, but also in times of prosperity when we can really build wealth. If this sounds great to you, you're not alone. Already thousands have joined us. If you're ready to join our community, then go to 5lessons.com and sign up online. And welcome to the revolution.
Thank you for watching this video, my friends. I hope you really enjoyed it. Make sure you leave a comment below and please subscribe to this channel. I want to give you so much more. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.